Do you want to work until you die? Well, if you don't, then you kind of have to plan it that way. And if you don't plan it well, you're probably going to work a lot longer than you need or want. And my guest today is going to talk us through something called exit planning. And that's the way to make sure that you don't work until you die. I'm Carl White, principal at Market Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency. And I'm also the host of PracticeCare. And the mission for both is the same, which is to help private practice owners stay private. Not only is that what they want, but I really believe that care is better when it's just you and your provider sitting at the table figuring out what's best for you. And nobody else is secretly whispering in the provider's ear what their own agenda is, whether it's a hospital or a health system or owners in faraway lands. Sometimes what they want is not the best for you, and I like it better when they're not even there to begin with. And today, my guest is Christopher Clepp. Chris Clepp is a wealth advisor with the Strategic Financial Group and has been so since 2013. But overall, he's been in the financial services industry for 21 years and now focuses on working with business owners under the age of 55 to partner with them to deal with life's challenges. He helps clients nationwide focus on what's really important to them and to know when they can make work optional. One area of focus is gaining control of their future by putting an exit plan in place as part of their overall financial plan. Chris, thanks for making some time to come on Practice Care.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you very much for having me on today, Carl.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let's just start with you before we get into exit planning. So your bio told us a good chunk of what you do professionally today, but you've been doing this for 21 years. So clearly you like it. Clearly it was part of a plan for you of some kind. So just kind of give us some more background on you, fill in some gaps. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I started 21 years ago. I can never forget my very first day in the business because it was 9/11.
Oh my God.
And so
That's a hell of a day.
I thought I was just changing careers into the same world, and I was changing careers into a different world at the time. And so I started on the insurance side of the business. That's where I started and worked for. I was an agent, a manager. I ran a brokerage with a business partner for a while. Mm-hmm. I eventually realized that you can be the world's greatest insurance agent, but you're still just the insurance agent at the end of the day. I wanted much more meaningful relationships with my clients. And that's when I started coming over to the financial planning side of things. And that's really what I started feeling really fulfilled in what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And what I came to realize is that over a period of time is that the people that I loved helping the most were the other crazy entrepreneurs and business owners just like me. We all run around with our hair on fire. Yeah. I have two small children. I run a business. I'm married. Obviously, I'm trying to do a lot of things, and the kids and the marriage and the business. That's about 108% of my time.
Right.
And so
what the hell are you doing here right now?
Yeah, and time is my most valuable asset. Is my true belief. I 100% believe that. We're always trading time for money or money for time. I would rather have more time on my hands. And so I know the value of having wonderful professionals to be able to outsource to. And that's really where I come in to help my business owner clients, whether they're owning private practices or other businesses, really helping them be the better business owner, better father, better mother, better spouse for their lives.
Right, right. Yeah, it's as you were describing, like the hair on fire, the 108%, what struck me was business owner also here is, we get so consumed necessarily and focused on the today and the tomorrow and the short term, but an exit plan and is longer term. And it's so easy to say that'll come, I'll get to that. And before you know it, a lot of time has passed. I'm curious, with the business owners that you work with, when you first met them, like as sort of an extrapolation of the population, which is always sketchy, but it's a good first shot. I mean, about what percent of business owners would you say have an exit plan at all, even if it's really, really bad?
Particularly when you're talking, younger business owners, you're probably talking, 25% have some sort of written documentation that has that, if that, right, that a lot of them have this idea that oh, I'm going to pass it on to my children. I'm going to grow this business and be able to sell it. I'm going to be able to work until 65 and then magically I'm just going to be able to turn this into that pile of cash that I always wanted, right? And that's why we start talking with people. You know, I'm a big Stephen Covey fan. Begin with the end in mind.
Right.
And we really need to start talking about the steps that are going to be able to get them to that end goal, whatever that may be.
Right. Right. So when I hear you say that, what I hear is, are they confusing hope with planning or hope with strategy? Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, hope isn't a strategy, right?
Yeah.
We really need to take some concrete steps to be able to get them to execute it. I mean, could things work out well if you don't really have a plan? Sure, I could also win the lottery. I'm just not counting on that as the way to be able to realize my dreams.
Right. Hope is essential in life, right? It's sort of, it lifts you up when nothing else will, but you can't plan hope. You can't spend more time on hope. You can't outsource hope to somebody else and that it'll work out. You can't do any of those things. And those are the kinds of things you need if you're going to make a dream come true, I guess, which is you want to exit at a certain age with a certain amount of resource and money. So it's got to be a plan. So let's get into exit planning. I didn't expect terribly different answers than what you gave, but I mean, I suppose maybe 25% is a bit higher, but if it's hope, then it's not really. Yeah. So maybe it was about the same. So exit planning, I mean, get us into it. What are the steps in putting together an exit plan? It's sort of a big question, but break it down for us.
Yeah, so there's really four basic steps that we're sort of walking into this with, right? So the first step is really beginning with that end in mind, like we talked about. What is your vision? Are you the owner that wants to be able to retire early? Is your expectation that a child is going to come in and be able to take over it? Are you going to want to sell to junior partners? Are you going to want to take it to a private equity? Are you just going to work until you drop? And there are business owners that tell me their plan is to work until somebody tells them they can't, or they walk, or they leave the office with a sheet over them.
Is that their desired plan, or they just, look, this is probably my life? More than a resignation kind of state of mind.
Well, there certainly are some that can't envision their life without doing their life's work, right?
Okay.
And so, and everybody, it's whatever your vision is. If it's what you truly want, then you can draw a plan that gets there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So begin with whatever that vision is and start with that. And then, close your eyes and think about what that end point is.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second piece is, what's the actual value of the practice? What's the value of your business? Is that, in my years of dealing with, with hundreds of business owners, most of them really don't know what the value of the practice is. They in their minds, it's, well, I need $5 million to retire, so my practice is worth $5 million.
Highly scientific methodology.
Right. I mean, and so the valuation of the practice, a formal valuation can cost, $15,000. And we're not talking about going through that formal valuation process now, but with a couple of years of tax returns and some data points that we have access to, we can put a reasonable number around it, something that's worthwhile to work off of.
Mm-hmm.
Then the third piece is that we want to create guardrails against catastrophe, right? So not only do you need to worry about your own personal health, but also your partner's health. And this is unique to business owners, right? There are some key individuals in your practice that if you just took them out of there, that would cause a disruption in the business. And we want to make sure that, that we have a plan that if everything works well, we're going to get there. But sometimes life happens, and that means how can we plan for this? And there's a lot of different ways that we can plan for it. It's just making sure we have excess reserve, that we have something in place so that if part A is taken out, this is what we're going to do. Sometimes we offset that risk to insurance companies. There's a lot of different ways to go around it, but we want to create those guardrails, right? And then the last piece is, can the business under its current under its current trajectory, get you to your vision.
Mm-hmm.
And if it can't, what changes do we need to make to either your other financial vehicles or within the practice? How can we make that practice get you to your end goal?
Mm-hmm.
And those are really the 4 steps that we have when we're talking about creating an exit plan for our business owners.
And I imagine it's really simple the way you lay it out. I mean, underneath each one of those steps is a lot of things to do, but it's pretty straightforward when you lay it out that way. What kind of, I think, flexibility to build in? By flexibility, I mean, when something in life changes, like I'm thinking of a client where they had an exit plan, which was to sell to some of the junior doctors who would come up and get experience. And for a variety of reasons, it didn't work out that way. So they ended up selling to a different entity. So I guess the common thing, the common part of the plan was they just sold to somebody different. But when things change, so you're standing here, you're asking somebody, let's say in their early 40s, for example, to project out 15, 20 years, a lot can happen in there. So is it a plan that's etched in stone, or what kind of flexibility do you build in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know as a 47-year-old, right? What I thought as a 37-year-old or 27-year-old, life has changed a few times along the way. I'm sure by the time I'm 57 and 67, there'll be a few more large changes that
Oops, we had twins twice. We didn't expect that. Like, what do we do now?
Right. Absolutely. And so that's a big value. When we're working with clients, we always tell clients the value is not in the actual plan; it's in the planning.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it's a process, right? It's having that trusted advisor to be able to work with you, so that when and if you do change your mind about your priorities, that you're still set up for success. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what happens, right? And we've dealt a lot with this, over the last couple of years, whether it's tax changes, right? That accelerated sales process. Obviously, a pandemic that nobody really was foreseeing, and how did that change parties? There's a lot of things that can happen. Yeah. That we want to make sure that no matter what your plan is going to work for, moving forward.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, there's only so much you can predict. I mean, when I was prior career, when I worked in corporate, we had to do all these long range forecasts. I mean, it was a different purpose, but it was the same concept. And one of the managers I had said, "Look, the one thing I can tell you about your forecast is it's wrong. Nobody knows, but the odds that you got it right are horribly against you. And that's not the point anyway. It's just to kind of point yourself in a good direction and then keep course correcting as you go." So it makes sense. So, I mean, why is it so important to think about a plan when it seems so far away? Just kind of going back to, if you don't take care of today, there is no tomorrow, right? So we got to take care of today. We got to take care of today. Even in those long range forecast presentations, we had to start with, okay, how's the year going to look? How's today going to look? Because if today's not looking good, it's all hands on deck today, and tomorrow we'll deal with tomorrow. So how do you get clients or prospective clients to look so far away?
Well, and back to your point, right? Like, so things change, right? So the one thing I can assure every single one of my clients is that they're going to leave their business. Mm-hmm. Now, when that is, we may not know, right? It's either going to be planned. It's going to be, okay, so I'm going to work till I'm 65 and I'm going to sell out of my practice at 65 to this entity or this person, right? Mm-hmm. And hopefully everything goes well like that. Mm-hmm. Or it could be unplanned, right? It could be, okay, well, I became disabled in a car accident. My spouse or my child got sick. It could be a lot of things that come into play, right? And that those are unplanned exits. Mm-hmm. And so the thing is that you're either going to go through that planned or unplanned exit, and it's either going to be orderly. You have a plan in place. You have the playbook that says, okay, this happened, so now it's step 1, 2, and 3. Mm-hmm. Or it's going to be disorderly. It's going to be chaos, and that's what you don't want. So we like to think that we have total control over our future, but we have very little control over our future. Life happens, and so we want to make sure that no matter what life throws at you, you're going to be able to go through it in an orderly fashion. So If it is, say,
Yeah.
for example, your own personal disability from a car accident, your spouse and family and partners are not going through, in addition to the emotional trauma, this financial fire drill. We want to make sure that we have a plan in place for that, right?
Yeah.
And so, so I mean, I think that that's really, really, important for us. It does take time to get a practice or business ready to sell. Everybody likes to think that you can snap your fingers. Recommendation is a minimum of 5 years out
Yeah.
to make sure that the books are perfectly clean and orderly for us to be able to present to a buyer, so that we're able to maximize the value of the practice sale. And the financial planning that goes around the practice sale is really important, right? So
Hmm.
do we need to save elsewhere outside of just running this business? How much, right? And that's also, can you run a better practice that's a little bit less profitable, perhaps, and still get what you want out of life? I think that
Hmm.
that's really, really important, right? I know a lot of your listeners are very, very interested in how can they run the most patient-centric practice that they can have. And
Yeah.
that is key. So why are you running this business for X when all you need is Y, and you can actually get the enjoyment out of the practice that you got into medicine for. So
Yeah.
maybe, and if we're thinking about, okay, well, this is what you need to live that future lifestyle.
Hmm.
Well, great, this is the numbers that you want, and you don't have to go all out from a revenue generating standpoint,
Hmm.
to be able to get everything you want out of life. Live your values as you go through here.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is, good exit planning is good business planning. It runs an efficient and smoother business, and it does make it possibly more profitable, and a more valuable practice later on down the road as well.
Yeah. I mean, as you were saying this, I was thinking of something that I've said once or twice, which is you think of it in the context. So exit plan, it's kind of tied to retirement planning. The timing tends to be similar. And I say, there's just no do-overs in that scenario. So if you had a vision of 5 million on the day that you kind of hang it up, but oh my God, you're coming in at 2.5, for example. Well, you can't go back in time and fix all that, So why not plan now while time is on your side and then course correct? And even if you end up at less, it's with eyes wide open and you have time to kind of acclimate to it. But if you sort of, wing it a prayer and hope, and geez, I always had 5 in my mind, then we're coming in at 2.5. Too bad for you, man. I mean, that's it. There's no time. You work longer, I guess, or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, there's just no do-overs, I mean, and that's not entirely true, but it's a better mind, to me at least, a better mindset. So why don't you try to get it right the first time? Why wouldn't you try to get it good the first time, while time's on your side?
Well, looking at it through a physician lens, right? Like, so you have a 40-year-old that walks into your office that tells you they want to be healthy when they're 65. Would you rather they reduce their drinking and start eating a better diet and start exercising now, or would you rather they do it when
Yeah.
they're 62?
Make an appointment when you're 64.5 and we'll tackle that puppy in an afternoon. I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
it's a good point. Yeah, it's point. So you hit on this earlier, but let's go to it now. So exit planning, financial planning, they must tie, right? If no other reason, because um, the timing is pretty similar, you would think. So maybe not, but it is. So how does one tie into the other?
Right. So if you think about, if you don't want to retire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that retire comes with a lot of emotional baggage to it. But you still need to put yourself in a position to make work optional. And that's really the way that we phrase it with our clients. Being prepared to make work optional, you're better prepared to sell the company when and if you want it, and if your priorities or interests change, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we guided someone through this when they started having some family issues, that their priorities came away from the business, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that would make it better for them. So if they've been preparing to make work optional, well, guess what? Now you can make these decisions where you can take a step back. They didn't sell the business, right, but they took a step back. It meant lower income. They had to bring in some other people to do it, but they were able to devote the amount of time they needed to their family. So that's always a good thing, is putting yourself in the position to make the decisions that you want
Mhm.
when you want to make them. And I think that there's a huge value for that.
Mhm.
You know, and then also when you're putting together a financial plan, like, okay, so we're gonna go typical person, right? I'm gonna retire at 65 and I need $200,000 a year to retire at 65. You know,
Right.
for a non-business owner, that becomes a pretty easy calculation, right? We can use historical rates of return and guesstimate that, you know, if you save this amount of money into this account, you're going to get $5 million, which is at the 4% rule is what it takes to generate $200,000. You know, with many business owners, again, their planning begins with, I'm going to sell my business for $5
Yeah.
million, or Judy down the street sold her practice for $3 million. I think my practice is just like theirs.
I'm better than Judy. You're right. Yeah. I can get
Oh,
more than
okay.
that.
And
Yeah.
you don't understand everything that went into making that
Yeah.
business worth that sales price.
Yeah.
So you start attaching these wrong numbers to it. And so when we understand what that number is, that's going to be their ideal number to live the type of life that they want to, you know, in retirement, then we can go, okay, well, now we have this business, which is the flywheel for your wealth generation.
Mhm.
But what else can we do? You know, first of all, we probably shouldn't have all of our eggs in one basket anyways. We should be saving outside of the business no
Right.
matter what. But then also now we know what the practice. So do we need to, you know, increase volume, margins, business practices? Like, is there a path to get you to that number, or is that just not realistic? And now we have some real information to do some real planning.
Mhm.
And the earlier that you start with this, again, so why does it make sense to start at 40 versus 55 when you're like, oh, I'm almost about to retire? Well, we can make small incremental changes at 40. They're going to have a huge tail effect versus at 55. Now you're at the end of the game. Now it's a 2-minute hurry up offense.
Right.
And you start rushing through things, and sometimes mistakes get made
Mhm.
that way. And then the other, I think, really overlooked thing, right, is that there's going to be a host of professionals, right, that are in the sale of the business. You have a buyer, you have attorneys, you have accountants, you have a business broker, you have a banker, you have consultants, and a financial planner, right? Like all those people are involved in some way, shape, or form into the sale of the business as we go through the exit, right? The one professional though on the business owner's team that's likely to play a heavy part before, during, and after that sale is going to be the financial planner, right? And someone needs to sit as the person that always has the client's long-term vision in mind, because one of the things that happens to every business owner, and speaking as one I totally understand it, is that we get caught up sometimes in working in our business,
Mhm.
but not on our business. And what happens is that you get caught, like you talk about, you're worried about the next day, the next quarter, the next year. Someone needs to be able to be sitting there going, okay, you focus on the running of the business, and I'm going to keep that professional eye on 10, 20, 30
Yeah.
years down the road for you. You know, and so you have all these professionals, they may be all going different directions. So you have to make sure that everybody's operating from the same playbook. You
Mhm.
know, think of it as a sports team. The business owner, the practice owner is the owner of the team. Well, then the financial planner can be the coach and making sure that everybody's executing the plays on the ground to make sure it's a winning franchise.
Got it. Yeah. It's all very true. And I like the way you say it is it's almost like you're not, well, you're sort of outsourcing who's my long-term vision person. I say I want this. Who's the shepherd of that? And what you're saying is the financial advisor. Makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. And it's a lot that you've given us to digest. And I know I say this to a lot of guests, but man, we could spend a lot of time and go deeper on this. But in the interest of the bite-sized advice nature of PracticeCare, um, and just kind of bringing us to the finish line, a couple of wrap-up questions I always ask. First, now that you've heard the questions and you've heard our conversation, is there anything you think I should have asked you but just didn't?
Yeah, I think that one of the most important things for people to think about when they think financial planning, right, is they think investments. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to give them $3 million and he's going to tell me where the right tax allocation, right balance is. And real financial planning to me is just so much more. It is helping clients live their best lives. It's helping them live their values. It's getting more of their time back to do what it is that's truly important to them. Listen, I know that a bunch of my clients are smarter than me, and they could do everything that I do if that's what they wanted to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
But this isn't what they want to focus on, and this is what I want to focus on. This is what gets me up during the day, and I'm pumped about helping all my business owner clients get everything that they deserve through their hard work.
Got it. Perfect. And then the final question is, if we take a step back from what we've been talking about, there's somebody listening to this episode and they say, I want to get started on this. Are there one or two tangible steps you'd recommend that they take? And I'll throw one out there. You got to look at yourself in the mirror and just confess, do I have a plan, or am I just hoping? And if you're just hoping, you just got to call it that way. And the way is, does it sound like a wing and a prayer? Is anything written down? Or are you just saying, oh, my business will be worth X, but you don't have even a sentence to explain why? You've got hope, and you need more than hope. So just be honest with yourself and then take action accordingly. So that's one. I stole one of the two, but what's another one?
Yeah. So first thing I would say is think about what your end vision is, and don't make it the next door neighbor's vision. Don't make it your classmate's vision. Make it your vision, and begin with that. Think deeply about what it is that you really want out of life, and use that as your true north. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I would tell you is to work with an advisor. Now, obviously, I would love it to be me, but there are lots of great advisors that are out there. Understand where your limitations from a time and focus perspective are, and just as you outsource to specialists within the medical field, particularly, there are specialists here. I think advisors that work primarily with business owners are uniquely attuned to being able to help that advisor. So work with an advisor that can help you realize these goals that you have.
Perfect. And maybe like a good screening question is, if you're looking for an advisor, is, so what percentage of your clients are, business owners versus on the personal side? And if they say, well, we just do personal side, maybe not for you, Mr. Entrepreneur or practice owner. Perfect. Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. Chris, thank you again for coming on and sharing your advice and your insights with our listeners. Once again, Chris Clepp is a wealth advisor with the Strategic Financial Group. And we're going to put all your contact information in the show notes so that anybody who wants to get a hold of you will find it very easy to do so. A couple of other points before we wrap up. First, if you are a practice owner and you've had an experience with the business side of your practice that you think others would benefit from, or if you're someone like Chris or myself who provides services to practice owners and you've got some expertise that you want to share, then we want you to come on PracticeCare. In the show notes for this episode and every episode, there's just a quick form. Fill it out. Tell us what you'd like to talk about. Please do so right away so that we can get you scheduled right away. And finally, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to PracticeCare on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks very much. And until next time.